if you only identify as those things, you're leaving out the bigger part of who you are. It meant I was going to be a doctor, I was going to be an engineer, I was going to be an accountant, I was going to be an attorney, I was going to be some title of social status, and that I was also going to be financially well off. That's what that meant to my family.
Always going to try to have a positive interaction with somebody to bring a little bit of love to the situation, because it brings love to me too, right?
The word proud, it's almost like you are doing right by me. Like I'm celebrating the actions that you're doing because they are right by me. And
as you get closer to the end, there's real freedom, peace, joy, what I would call real love.
and people to pay attention on like why you're going to therapy and what therapy is doing for you, because a lot of what I see is people using it as an anchor to convince themselves, again, like spiritual bypassing, that they're okay. I don't involve those people in my life. I don't. I've cut them out. And that has cost me a lot of physical loneliness. Like I have very few people in my life.
I just looked at him. I got real close to him. And I just said, Namaste means the divine in me honors the divine in you.
My job to make sure that they're making choices out of alignment with themselves and blocking out the outside noise.
Right. It's your job to make sure they do something. You can't fulfill that. That's the ego still.
Oh, Bill, I love this.
Hey, my name's Bill Powdler, and this is
Luisa.
And we're here to talk about awakening and conscious living.
And today we're going to talk about the ego. We're going to some of our own experiences and story and hope that you can take something away from it. So, Bill, I've been excited to talk about this with you because, as I was just telling you, I don't delve in this space like a whole lot. I don't think a whole lot about like what is the ego and all of that. And I suspect today I'm going to learn why. I'm going to figure this out while we're having this conversation. But what is the ego to you?
Okay. First off, I looked at your questions this morning and I thought they were really good. And I don't use that term ego very much. So I just back checked it on Chat GPT real quick. And then I explained back to it what I thought the ego was. And Chat GPT said, you're spot on. So,
Perfect.
uh,
Perfect.
so here's what the ego is. Think about everything that we learn is a pattern. Okay.
Okay.
Like if I'm going to make coffee in the morning, I get up and I think, oh, I'm going to go get myself a cup of coffee. And I don't have to retrain myself to learn how to get coffee every morning, right?
Right.
Because that's a pattern. And that's what our brain does for us in this complex world is it creates patterns. Like I ride a bicycle, we walk, we brush our teeth, we eat, we do this, we recognize colors. All these things are patterns inside our brains. Um, and it's important to be able to have a pattern, right? Because otherwise we'd have to get up and relearn how to go to the bathroom every morning. And then you have to understand language too. And we talked a little bit about language last time, and that is language is, this sound, uh, these sounds that we put together, these words that we put together verbally, and we assign those to a pattern or a label. Okay. So when I get up and say, I'm going to go get coffee, I'm going to go get coffee is a label assigned to a pattern. Okay. So now we have to have these patterns in our brain to operate. Otherwise, we'd have to get up and start new every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'd be just like a baby every day. But then when we're in the world, we start identifying with our patterns. Okay.
Wow.
I'm a fireman. Okay. Well, what does that mean? Okay. Well, I'm a rescue hero. I'm courageous. I've been trained in how to put out fires, all those type of things. And so then, and all those are patterns that a fireman learns, right? But then we identify with the pattern. Okay. Because I go, well, And Luisa, I'm just going to pretend that you're a fireman. And so I go meet you at a party and I go, so Luisa, what do you do? And what do you say?
I'm a fireman.
I'm a fireman. Okay. So you've identified with the pattern of being a fireman. Okay. And then, a fireman has a certain perceived patterns. Okay. I'm courageous, I'm strong, know a lot about all these different things. Okay. Another example would be, uh, I thought of this morning as I was just rolling through things in my mind. When we see somebody on the street that's living on the street, we go, oh, that's a homeless person.
Mhm.
They're homeless. We don't walk around, I don't meet you for the first time and go, are you homed?
Right.
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 Okay. And
Right.
so when we identify, we take that label homeless, put it on a person on the street, and then we build all these belief systems around them. They're lazy, they're unintelligent, they're drug addicts, they're this and that. But the people that live on the streets, they don't identify themselves as homeless. Okay. And we don't identify ourselves as homed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Uh, and so now you just start, work through it. I mean, let's just pretend I'm a Catholic. Okay. Well, what does that mean? Well, I subscribe to this certain Christian belief system. And, in the Catholic Church, they believe that when the host is consecrated, uh, which they call the body of Christ, right? Which I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but because obviously that resonates with me, the body of Christ. But they believe that that is the true body of Christ. And then you can go down the whole cannibalism thing if you want to, right? Which is and the church has got all type of ways they work around all these things. But we have all these beliefs that are tied up around Catholicism. And then we say, I'm a fireman and I'm homed and I'm Catholic and I'm this. And see how I keep saying I am? Okay. Those are us identifying. Okay. So we've got the belief systems. Okay. We've got the patterns. We've named them, but then we identify with them. Okay.
Mm.
And so now if, you come up to me and say, well, what religion are you? Well, I'm a Catholic. Okay. And then you have to defend that position. If you're a Baptist or you're a Buddhist, so we identify with all these things, okay? And then we have expectations around those identities, okay? If
Mm.
I'm wealthy, then I expect to be respected, and I have a nice car, and I live in a big house, and I've got it made, or whatever it is. Now, doctors have certain prestige. Um, you think about somebody that works in the back of a trash truck picking up trash. Usually go, oh, that's a terrible job. I'd never want that job. Somebody's got to pick up the damn trash. So we label all this stuff. And then not only do we label other people, we obviously label ourselves. I keep saying, I'm Bill, I'm Catholic, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a motorcycle rider, I'm going to give you all my labels. I'm a father, I'm a brother, I'm a hot air balloon pilot, I'm a scuba diver, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that. Um, we identify with those roles and we then forget that we're really just a drop of God consciousness in a body. But anytime we start identifying with those roles, not that we can't identify with the roles, but when we identify with the roles to the point that it rolls over that that's who we truly think we are,
Yes.
that's when the whole thing just falls apart and it no
Yeah.
longer serves you.
And that's so perfectly said. And so that is sort of the same thing that I had come to is that ego is the identity that we have constructed about who we are. It's like the story that we say about who we are, right? I'm Luisa, I'm a paralegal, I'm a mom of two, I'm a Dominican American, all all of these things. None of those things have actually said anything about who I actually am.
That's right.
Like, they have not said anything about my character. They have not said anything about what I believe. They have not said anything about how I care for people I love. They have said nothing about who I actually fundamentally am as, part of God being God's child, part of, being a soul having a human experience. None of those things have been identified. And to your point, the problem begins with that, right? When we take that and we make it everything that we are. We have forgotten and left out all of the other aspects and the most important aspects of who we are, like the fact that we're a soul having a human experience, the fact that we are a drop in a big ocean of this huge, 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 universe. And then we just sort of roll around in the world projecting this image about all of these things that it's not that they're not part of who we are because they are part of our 3D experience,
Right.
but they are not everything that we are. Fundamentally, if you only identify as those things, you're leaving out the bigger part of who you are. And that's when we end up where we are today, unfortunately, in the world, in our society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and that's where we pick up the judgment too.
Yes.
Okay. Because you go, well, I'm an entrepreneur and I understand this and that, and I'm right about this. And I sent you that piece of that poem, the Rumi poem, the other
Yeah.
day. Yes. Uh, this is, I think this is called the Great Wagon or the Great Wagon Wheel, but this is just one sentence inside of it. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field. I will meet you there.
Ooh.
So many people we talk to, they think, well, democracy is the right way, uh, or socialism's the right way, or eat 3 square meals a day, or all these things that people go, this is right. And they drive a stake in the ground. But really, if we're all, like you said, we're all these little individuation pieces of consciousness, we're all just a particular perspective on the world.
Yeah.
And if you or I are in a different situation than the situation we're in, a different perspective, like, this is 20 or 30 or 40 years ago when I think it was a soccer team plane crashed up in the mountains in South America
Yeah.
and they turned to cannibalism, right? To stay alive. And that was hard for them, obviously. But coming out of that, the couple of the survivors, I mean, they were labeled terribly in society. And how could you do that? You never know. There's a couple movies out there that are really good about this, but you never know what you will do in any given situation.
Yes. Say that louder for the people in the back. You just it is so crazy because you don't know. You really do not know until you are in that place. You can pass all the judgment that you want. When you said earlier about, the homeless, when you used that example, right? We tend to take the homeless population and immediately label them as lazy, drug addicts, bad people.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you the number of homeless people that I know that are actually veterans who served this country.
Yeah. Absolutely.
How does that equate, like, how do we immediately go to a homeless person is a bad person? That person put their life in jeopardy for your freedom. How do we, as a society in general, go and immediately define that population without knowing, again, anything about who they actually are just because of a situation they currently find themselves in? And To bring it to, like, real life, a lot of the finance people and whatever economics people in this country say that most Americans are, like, 2 or 3 paychecks away from not being able to sustain their living situation. That can happen to any of us at any given time.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's crazy because it is that ego. It is operating from that ego and applying those labels that immediately takes away from our humanity. It takes away from looking at people for people. And that's like the best words that I've come up with. Is like
Say
we
that last part about people from people?
looking at people for people, like looking at people as human beings,
Yeah,
as opposed to, she's a paralegal or he's an attorney or and in this you experience a lot like in my field, like when you say, like I'll tell people I went to law school, but I only got a master's degree, so I'm not a Juris Doctor, I'm not a lawyer. Immediately you can see it in their face. It's like a drop in like value. It's like I'm less than.
right,
But it's
exactly.
like that was a conscious choice, and that doesn't define who I am as a person. That attorney may be more, a better person than I am, but you have to get to know us both to define that. You have to know who we are fundamentally. That label alone is not gonna give you that information,
Right.
and we've taken that and just made a whole, oh my gosh, well, it's like a whole world. We live in this whole world now, so you had already started to mention it before I went on my rant. Is abandoning the ego the goal? Like, is it the goal to abandon your ego completely?
No, definitely not. But you have to define the ego. So if we have to have these rules or constructs uh, to function in the world, we can't just wipe all that out. Okay. It's just the identity with the rules. Okay. You have to wipe out completely the identity with the rules. Okay. So you're no longer, a fireman. You're just Louisa. And and even the name Louisa, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, in a way that I mean, that's we build our identity around our name per se, right?
Yeah.
But we have to, I mean, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We still have to use words, okay, to so we can communicate in this world.
Right.
Because on the other side of the veil, we can communicate with telepathy and those type of the clairaudience, clairvoyance,
Weird.
or um, but in this world we have to use words. When we call about stripping the ego, it's stripping our identity with the labels, taking those. Okay, we can still be Louisa, we can still be Bill. We're just not identified with, and we can still play the role. Okay, like, and the way we use our words, like I ask you, "What do you do?" and I'm a fireman, right? What if you're at a party and somebody says, "What do you do?" and you said, "Well, my current role to make a living
Yeah.
is this,
Yeah.
but I also play the role of father and brother and all these other things."
Yeah.
Okay. But see, when you state it like that, you state it in a way that you're not identifying with it, but this is the role that I'm playing in this physical world, which is fine. We
Yeah.
have to play roles, and that's we come in with different gifts, and it's those if we're really and that's part of the spiritual path too, is staying in tune with our gifts because we're the only people that can bring our specific gift into the world, right? So we need to bring that gift into the world. Uh, so we don't need to just sit around. Not that there's some people in the world that are made like yogis that are there to be an example to sit around and meditate all the time so they can reflect back to us where we have identified with the ego. But we can't all be yogis, okay? Not really live in the world. And we're not supposed to because we're co-creators. So we're supposed to be co-creating with the universe and with each other, but it's just the identification of that.
That's perfect because I was going to say that it is very different to say, "Hi, I'm Luisa. I am, a paralegal," versus, "Hi, I'm Luisa. For a living, my work, my 9 to 5, how I earn a living is doing this and all of that." So I think you said it so perfectly and beautifully. So it's the integration. It's the integration of here is the roles that I play, but that doesn't define me. And I think being clear about that does require the use of words and good words and phrasing it well and putting those words together well to basically, for me, at the end of a conversation at a party, I've learned that what I want to walk away with is how little I know about you. Because yeah, because for me, it's come to a point where it's like, yes, I know your job title. Yes, I know that, that you're a father or, a brother, that you, all the things that you are, but I don't know you. Last party that I was at, because I was very conscious about it, I was like, I don't want to come in here and meet people. It was everybody in the legal field. And I'm like, I know we're all in the legal field. I know to one extent or another what we all do. This is, whatever. I
Right.
wanna know, like, a little bit more about people, and it was great because the game that we ended up playing, and I don't remember what the name of it was, but it was a really funny game that really gave me insight into people's characters. It was like, "This is amazing," because I get to know now I know their roles, and I know a little bit about, the other roles that they play in their life as you walk around and chat with people, but, like, now I get to know, like, what would they decide? It was a game. It was super funny. It was like, what would you do? In, like, a lot of situationals, like, what would you do? And it was intended to be funny, and it was, but it really allowed you to sort of see people's thought process, like, how they got to making that decision, and it was beautiful. I felt like I met people at that party. It was the first, like, party with other professionals that I felt like I actually got to know people beyond, "Oh, I do this," and I'm like, "Yeah, great, okay."
Mm.
Why do you think people get stuck there? Why do you think people get stuck in this illusion about, and identifying with their ego and essentially like get stuck in suffering? Because based on my own experience, when I lived just completely out of ego, it's when I suffered the most in my life, which has been
Absolutely.
the majority of my life. So why do you think people get stuck in that place where they just identify with ego and therefore like perpetuate their own suffering?
Well, if you look at the way we're brought up in the world, it's all reinforced from a very, very early age. I mean, you told me, think about you're a mother, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me what you associate. What are the beliefs that you have as a mother?
So this is a great question because I kind of there's a before and after for me.
Okay, great.
So there is my son. I was a really young mom. I was 19 years old when I had my son, and first generation American. I've shared before, and so I was always reminded that my family. I grew up with my dad, so that my dad's family gave up our culture and our country and everything that we knew so that I would have a better life.
Hmm.
And what that better life looked like was very clear for my family. It meant I was going to be a doctor, I was going to be an engineer, I was going to be an accountant, I was going to be an attorney, I was going to be some title of social status, and that I was also going to be financially well off. That's what that meant to my family. That was embedded in me.
There you
So
go.
when I had my son as a 19-year-old who had no idea about anything, that was initially everything that I did was to ensure that my son would be able to accomplish those things. So I did all of the things, right? From the time this kid was in my womb, I'm like playing classical music for him because that's what they said makes the most intelligent kid so that my son could get into an Ivy League college. Like this
Wow.
was legit how I thought of things. And so, the preschool that he was gonna go to, it was like I needed him to go to this specific preschool. I needed him to learn to play an instrument. I had already laid it out for him. I needed him to learn to play the piano. I needed him to learn a third language because we were already gonna automatically he was already automatically bilingual. Like, it was like this crazy madness that I had about that was the foundation of what I thought it meant to be a good mother, was to get him to that place where he was going to be able to accomplish all of those things. Now switch it up. After I had my own awakening, my belief as a mother, my main belief and the main thing that I tell my children is what I want most from you is to find a life in which you feel in alignment, in which you feel fulfilled. And I don't use the word happy intentionally. I
Mhm.
I tell them, especially my son, is I want you to pick when he was choosing schools, because he's in a freshman in college now. I want you to do and choose a career and a school based on what you want to experience, based on what at this time in your life you want for yourself. It's not about what I want. It's not about what you think you need to do to, make the most money. It's about what do you want to do? What do you right now feel like you want your life to feel like when you are in that school and when you graduate from whatever career choice you make?
Mhm.
And fundamentally, not just did I change, right? So as a mother, my belief to answer the question in a really long way, I believe that it is my duty to make sure that my kids are making choices out of alignment with themselves, not with the outside world, that they can block out the noise. That is my number one job.
See, and that is beautiful, and that's a beautiful example, okay? But I also would say that you thinking it's your job, repeat that last sentence you said to me. It's
It
my
is
job.
my job to make sure that they're making choices out of alignment with themselves and blocking out the outside noise.
Right. It's your job to make sure they do something. You can't you can't fulfill that. That's the ego still.
Oh, Bill, I love this.
Think
Okay.
about that.
Okay.
Because can you make sure that I do anything? Can I make sure that I can make my kids do anything? So even that, I'm not saying that your actions aren't right, but even that little bit of verbiage right there,
Yeah.
you've got at some level an attachment to making sure that your kids still do good,
Yeah.
right?
That's good. Yeah.
So, and I'm not throwing stones at you because here's the let's see, one of the questions. I want to look at this question because I thought this was interesting.
Detach.
Oh yeah. How does the ego show up in spiritual
Yes.
seekers?
Yep.
Okay. Because this is the subtle part of the very subtle part of after you awaken, there's still a lot to let go of. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, you because it's so ingrained in us, we can't even see it. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, but here's a lot of things one of the things that happens in spiritual seekers when they wake up, and I, the only reason I can honestly say this is because I used to believe this, and it's so sad when I look back at it, and I thought, oh damn, I'm awakened. Look, I understand a bunch of stuff other people don't understand, and I got puffy and egoy about it, right? Like, oh yeah, they're just idiots. I can't believe they're doing that type of stuff. So you have that better than, okay.
Yes.
And I think almost everybody that goes through the awakening has that. And so really we've awakened slightly. The ego wants to hold on because except for maybe it allows us kind of to be grounded in the world at some level or think we're grounded in the world. But the ego just changed belief systems. Okay. So I was a Catholic and now I'm a spiritual seeker. And so now I've just traded all my Catholicism for yoga and ums and blah, 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 blah. Okay. Like, and then I think, well, if you're not doing yoga or you're not meditating every day, you know, and so the ego will do that with you. You'll just swap and swap and swap and swap
Mhm.
and keep going to new belief systems. Okay.
Yeah.
And they're more spiritual. That's where you get that fake spirituality
Yeah.
inside the spiritual world.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, um, Like, and the only reason I know this about like being a mother, being a father type of thing is because I've really looked at this inside my family. Like
Yeah.
I used to use the word proud. I'm so proud of you. I quit using that word because that proud is like, you're doing good and right. And so I'm acknowledging, I don't know, it just didn't set with me anymore. So I quit saying I'm proud of my kids and I say, I'm so happy that I had a beautiful conversation with my daughter over Christmas time. She lives in Wyoming and I live in Alabama. And she came in and we had a couple, two coffees or something that were 2 or 3 hours long, just the two of us, just sitting there talking about eh, stuff, beautiful stuff. And, you know, in the old sense of the word, am I proud of her? Yes. But I don't like that word proud. It feels icky. But so I just told her, I'm so happy that you're finding yourself and that you're doing these things to enhance your life. And I'm just very, very happy for you.
I love that.
So,
I love that. Thank you for sharing that as a parent, along with what you mentioned earlier. And I am just also like to back up a little bit. It's the first thing that you said. Like, there's so much to shed. I'm in this space of shedding a whole lot of things I'm noticing. So, always shedding, but right now feels like there are a lot of things that I'm shedding at once. A lot of beliefs are like ingrained in me, things that I just took for truths that were just that. And now I'm like, well, are they true to me? Like, how does it feel to me? And I love when you were saying about the proud, so this really resonates with me, and this is what I took away from it, is the word proud. It's almost like you are doing right by me. Like I'm celebrating the actions that you're doing because they are right by me.
yeah,
And yeah, and like I'd hate to put that, like that's not my intention to put that on my kids. Like they don't need to do right by me. They need to do right by
then,
themselves.
yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that's beautiful.
Well, thanks for
And
explaining that to me too. I didn't have the words. I could feel the feeling, but I didn't have the words. Thanks for the words.
of course. This is how this works. It's lovely. I love it. Yeah, so and yeah, how does the ego show up in spiritual seekers? You know, it's that it's that thing where it's like I'm more enlightened, that's a big one. It's like, oh, I went through that at the beginning, like hardcore. I was like, yeah, I know more than these people. They look at all these dumb things they're doing and how could they? They're just so in the dark and I'm all these and I mean, life humbled me really quickly, but, that's one of the biggest ones that I see, and then the spiritual bypassing, I feel like that's another one too, is the big, like avoiding the human cost, like, "Oh, it is what it is," or it's, whatever it's meant to be, and using that as an excuse to, like,
Yeah,
not dig deeper, and then one that I see or saw, I actually haven't seen it a lot lately, is the healing junkie, and, the healing junkie, I identify that as someone who's like, "Oh, I need another workshop. I need another, I need another mentor. I need another la la la, la 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 la, like, I need another healing retreat. I need another da da da."
yeah,
And the truth is that, first of all, I believe that everything, like, it's within you. Like, if you're paying attention and you're taking moments of silence and you're listening to yourself, you are going to be able to understand what it is that you need to heal next. Like, it's just gonna come up.
right,
You're not gonna be able to avoid it. And yeah, sometimes we do need help. Sometimes there are things that we need help healing. And yes, you do need that other therapist or that other guide, but people who are in constant, like, I need another retreat and stuff. Um, yeah, that I feel like is another way that the ego shows up, and then feeling behind on your spiritual journey. But with regards to the healing junkie, there's something that I want to say. We all need help sometimes. We all need help. I've been to therapy more times than I could probably remember, and I will continue and I will go back to therapy whenever I feel like it's a tool that's going to help me.
agreed.
There was a point in my life where, there was a big push for me to put my kids during divorce, like, during the divorce process, like, put my kids in therapy, and I was really against it, and at the time, I didn't have the words, it was just a feeling, it was this very strong feeling, I was like, "My kids don't need therapy. I will know when my kids need therapy," and I like any other part of the spiritual journey of just existing in this 3D world, I caution people to pay attention on like why you're going to therapy and what therapy is doing for you, because a lot of what I see is people using it as an anchor to convince themselves, again, like spiritual bypassing, that they're okay. I'm okay because I'm in therapy.
Right.
It's like, well, being in therapy is not the solution. You go to therapy for a guide and then you do your inner work. Like
Right.
therapists are a guide, much like as a mother, I am a guide, right? Just like you said, I can't make my children do anything. I am a guide. The therapist is a guide. And I just caution people, therapy, like I said, is a beautiful thing, but are you using that to do the inner work? Are you using them as a guide, or are you using them as an anchor to avoid the things that you should be doing? And I just really caution people to be aware of the why you're going to therapy and what it's doing for you and making sure that you are an active participant in that guidance that you're receiving at therapy, because that is the only way that you're going to heal. Just seeing a therapist for the sake of seeing a therapist is not going to heal you.
No, I agree. It's just, sometimes it's hard for us to look in the mirror and see our own cracks. And so it's going to therapy is, being able to look at somebody to look at the forest while you're in the middle of it.
Yeah,
So,
I love that. What practices can help someone observe their ego without rejecting themselves?
um, I think I don't know if this is in a later version of what we're supposed to do, but I think we want to talk about for just a second at least the negative side or the difficulty in the spiritual journey.
Okay, I love that. Yeah.
And that is as we start down this journey, it's a stripping process.
Mm.
Okay. The whole spiritual journey is walking toward enlightenment is a stripping process of all our belief systems that we've attached ourselves to, or allowed them to be attached to us in this world. And, my process has been a solid 30 years of working on myself. And it is hard work because the ego wants to hold on. And then when you release something, there's an emptiness there, and your vibration, for lack of a better word, changes. And you lose friends, you lose institutions, you lose basically, you lose everything. As you get closer to the end, there's real freedom, peace, joy, what I would call real love, agape type of love, um, and philo, brotherly type of love. Uh, but the stripping process is it's very hard because all of a sudden you realize that something needs to be stripped, and as soon as you realize that, and sometimes it's not even a intellectual understanding. Sometimes it's kind of like you said with your kids. You could feel that it wasn't necessary at that point in time to put them. So as you go down the spiritual journey, a lot of times you just start feeling things deeper and you feel what needs to let go. And you don't really even do anything, but just allow it to let go. But that constant stripping process can be very lonely and very silent and very difficult. And it usually, at least for me, it comes in waves.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden, I'll have a month or a couple months or a couple weeks, and I'll just be, beside myself almost. And then when I come out of it, I'm more peaceful, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, a lot of times people jump into the spiritual world, they get a little bit awakened, which I'm not saying anything against it. Uh, but then they just keep trading belief systems because when you touch this emptiness, it's not easy stuff.
Yeah.
So I just think that that's a warning, and at the same time, a realization that people need to know as they walk down this process.
Yeah. And I'd like to add to that that what makes it so hard and so lonely is, I mean, a lot of things, but one of the major things in my own experience has been because looking in the mirror, recognizing myself, having to see my wounds, having to acknowledge that I've been hurt, having to acknowledge who hurt me, having to acknowledge that I let that happen, having to acknowledge the role that I played in every single situation, and being, or I guess not being unable to, but choosing not to run from that. Choosing not to run with it from it, but rather sit in it, that's really painful. And when you're going through that, it becomes very lonely because there necessary I mean, for a lot of different reasons in my personal experience, it was like I didn't have anybody else who was going through that, so I didn't have anybody else who could understand.
Right.
And it becomes a very lonely process, and there is so much the shedding that you're doing, I kinda for me, like, the shedding that I was doing internally was showing in my external world in the shedding of that I was doing of friends, of people, of institutions, of all of those things, and one of someone recently said something to me that I'm still, like, fully processing because it seems like it's something that I've accepted, and I think I'm not, like, consciously aware of it. The situation was like a narcissist person in that space that this other person is having a relationship with, and this person welcomed me into that space with a narcissist. And I
Mm.
said, "I can't go there. I cannot be in this relationship with you if you're consciously choosing to go back into that relationship because out of in my personal, viewpoint, it's one thing when you do it and you're unaware, it's another thing when you do it and you have awareness because that to me is a choice. You're
Right.
choosing that. And
Right.
so I said to this person, I could not be in a relationship with you who's consciously choosing to be in a relationship with a narcissist. And I'm certainly not going to be joining the space that you're in with a narcissist because I don't involve those people in my life. I don't. I've cut them out. And that
Right.
has cost me a lot of physical loneliness. Like I have very few people in my life, but that is a choice that I've made, and that person said to me, "Do you realize that the path that you've chosen in life by making that decision is probably gonna leave you being completely alone?" And I said, "Yes. Yes, I have." Because it was for them a tactic of trying to get me to be okay to be in the room with that narcissist, but I already
Right.
decided that that's not part of my journey anymore. It's not
Right.
something that I'm choosing for myself. So that is the level of it's why sometimes it does get so lonely. I am very grounded in my decision to the point, like this person pointed out to me, that I have accepted that I will walk my path fully alone if it means that I am not going to make decisions that are out of alignment for me. That is a choice. And it's, a lot of people may see that as whatever they may see it. For me, it's being grounded. I did not waver in what I believe. I did not waver in what feels true and right to me. And whatever that means to the outside world is just a consequence of that in the outside world that does not affect me. So that is part of why this journey is and can become so lonely. Once you decide to walk your spiritual path and be true to yourself, there are decisions and people who are going to not be okay, not accept it. But the way that I see it is I'd rather live in my own truth than live in this reality that doesn't feel like my truth.
And I think it's so interesting, that somebody who's attached to the narcissist, says, do you realize that, you're going to be lonely? Trying to exert their power. Nobody knows. We don't know if we have our next breath. And so now you're trying to project into the future that I'm going to be lonely. Uh, you have no idea what's going to happen. I have no idea. I mean, them, meaning you, not you, them, have no idea what's going to happen. I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow either.
Yeah.
And so, but we use that, you're going to end up, if you don't do this, you're going to end up like this.
Yeah.
And, it just, people just, saying things that are unconscious.
And sometimes projecting too, and I think that, when you're so grounded in yourself, those things don't bother you because for me, it was like an immediate like, "Yeah, sure, if that's what happens, like, cool then." And also, I wanna point out that very there is a difference in being alone and being lonely. Like,
Yes.
there is a big difference, and so be aware of, like, what somebody's projecting upon you and make sure you don't let that sink in and become true for you because they can see it that way as me being lonely, but yes, I feel lonely very rarely compared to how much I'm alone,
Yeah, I would
you
agree
know?
with that. And I do believe that, and this is a pretty overarching statement. I don't like overarching statements, so take it with a grain of salt. I mean, we do come into this world and building relationships with people, it's part of our nature.
Absolutely.
And, I think science even proves that people that are in a community as they grow older live longer and things like that. Um, but what I have found, and well, I would agree with you completely that being alone and loneliness are two different things because as you turn into yourself, you no longer are alone. Uh, so you have yourself, you're connected to everything. Human interaction, though, is important.
Yes, it is.
Um, and somewhere, but let's talk about our last, if you want to, you ready to jump
Yeah.
to our last thing, which is what are practices?
Yes, that's right. What practices can help someone observe their ego without rejecting themselves?
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you, to me, the probably the only practice that has to happen. I mean, you have to choose to go down the path, and it's a conscious choice. Okay, I think I've said this earlier before. Jesus said you have to put two hands to the plow and don't look back. Okay, lots of ways to say that, but that's basically you have to choose it, and then and you have to sit in the silence. That is really the thing that you have to do. And very few people in this world sit in the silence. And I put myself in a lot of silence and I get really restless sometimes. But but I'm at the point now where I can be by myself for days and days and not really need human interaction per se. I'm not proud of that. I'm not saying that in a proud way. I'm just saying that I've spent that much time with myself that I'm pretty comfortable with myself. So I think, I mean, I could tell you 1,000 different ways that I've done practices, but the biggest one is you've got to slowly just keep putting yourself into the quiet
Yeah,
because
I
that's
agree with
only
you.
only way you can hear your soul is in the quiet
Yeah,
until
that's
you get used to hearing your soul, and then you can hear it in the noise.
yes, I'm so glad you said that. Yes, 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 yes. And that is exactly what I was gonna say is the same exact thing is you have to choose it. It is a choice. You have to consciously, for me, the spiritual path kept like being thrown in my face so many times and I would just turn, look elsewhere, turn, look elsewhere, turn, look elsewhere. And until I chose it, my life didn't start changing and then that quiet, it's crazy. It sounds really crazy, but I'm like you where I've spent so much time alone and I look forward to spending time alone. I love spending time alone
I do too.
so much that one of the things that I'm actually like trying to be more conscious about this year has been making sure that I have more human interaction. I'm like, I can't forget how to use my human skills. And like, I do it for my 9 to 5, but not in that way. Like, making sure that I have, enjoyable human experiences like that I choose to have because it is so easy for me to be by myself and enjoy just being with myself. I love it a lot. Um, and it's such a beautiful thing. So I do think that that's the main practice. That's where you start. Until you have done that and feel comfortable with yourself, until then, you won't be able to hear yourself in the noise. That was my experience. Like, until I did enough of aloneness, I know what my soul sounds like. I know what that voice sounds like, and I can identify it at any point, anywhere that I am. But I think that only came from spending so much time listening to just my soul and just being with myself. Um, so yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. And I would also say, well, two things. I mean, I pretty much keep in the forefront of my mind that I'm an eternal being in a human body,
Mm.
and that eternal being is a drop of God consciousness, individuated at some level from God consciousness, so I can have this experience to learn and to grow. Uh, I pretty much keep that whole concept at the forefront of my mind. And
Yeah.
so as you're walking around in the non-silence, uh, you know, that keeps you focused. The other thing about needing human contact, when I'm out in the world, like I create these little micro, I don't even really, this is interesting because I'm saying this out loud and haven't even thought about this sentence that I just said. Create these little micro environments to share and like get on a soul level with somebody real quickly. So,
Mm.
like, I was at the grocery store the other day. There was a man in there, about my age, little older. I don't know. There was a song playing or something. I made reference to it. It was just him and I on the elevator. He was working, at the grocery store, getting carts. Okay. So he was not a high level, money making individual or whatever. But we were about the same age. So we talked about music for a second, and I could feel that he had a good soul. Um, so we just had a quick, I mean, this was in less than 3 minutes of walking onto the elevator together alone, going up one floor, and then standing in the lobby right before I walked into the parking garage. Um, because we have a covered garage for a grocery store, which is really nice.
That is
Uh,
fancy.
for the rain. Um, but we just did a little blurb. I asked him what year he was born. We talked about a couple music songs for just a second. He was just open. I could feel it. And we were both smiling. I was about ready to walk away. And I said, "Have you ever heard of the word namaste?" And he said, "No, I don't know." And he said, "Repeat that word." So I said, "Namaste." I said, "It's this old Sanskrit word," which he may or may not know what Sanskrit was. But I said, I just looked at him. I got real close to him, and I just said, "Namaste means the divine in me honors the divine in you." And boy, I mean, we were there. We were right there loving each other for just 30 seconds. But
I love that.
I'm sure that stuck with him because it's stuck with me, right?
Yeah.
And that's, those are some little human interactions that you can have where it's not your family, it's not all the rules that we came up with and roles that we have a hard time breaking because when we're in our family roles, we play those roles, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to break out of those. But anyway, that's the last part was then that is how you can be real human in little bitty micro interactions as you move through the world if you're just open with an open heart. I mean, I'd never not have a conversation with the bag boy or the guy that's driving the taxi, or it doesn't matter what it is. I always gonna have, if I've got a second and I'm rolling through something, I'm always gonna try to have a positive interaction with somebody to bring a little bit of love to the situation because it brings love to me too, right?
It does. It does. I love that you shared that. And that's a beautiful way to put it. Is those micro moments, and they impact people's lives. They make a difference, just like they do in ours, just like it did for you. It does for them too. People remember that because, for me, and I'll just wrap up with this. Just like those micro moments that you shared with me, that's how I started being more intentional, but in doing that with others, and I don't do it to, like, the same depth that you do, but as you're saying that, I'm like, "Oh, that's what I do with, the cashier, that's what I do." But it was because somebody else did that for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And, we love to receive those, and people have done that to me all my life too, right?
yeah, yeah. That's beautiful. Well, thank y'all for watching.
Namaste. If anybody
Namaste.
does anybody know what this means? You
I
know
have
what this
no
means?
No, is
This
it love?
it's Pura Vida. It
Oh.
comes from Costa Rica,
Oh,
and it
yes!
means and pura means pure,
Pure
vida means life, right?
pure life,
Pure life.
yes. Oh, I
So,
love that, yes, okay.
namaste.
Namaste, pura vida, until next time.